Hello everybody, ciao a tutti and welcome to Art with Ms.B. Today we're going to do a beautiful, colorful and pretty short practice about poppy flowers, a big favorite of mine. If you know me, as a teacher and as an artist, and if you don't, please make sure to check out my Instagram page, my website, so you can understand a little better about my artistic process and my products. I love abstract, colorful art. And I have been doing many different versions of poppy flowers in the past. Now we are getting close to November 11, which is Veteran Days, and in my school in Bluffdale, in Utah, we celebrated very, very nicely with a beautiful assembly when we invite veterans and their families, and we sing songs and we decorate the gym. And usually the poppy flowers are from the, one of the subjects that we create as artists. It's also an international symbol for veterans. In fact, as you know, I'm Italian and I grew up in Italy, and there is a beautiful song dedicated to veterans of the Second World War, specifically to partisans who were the soldiers who actually secretly allied with the American soldier to save Italy from the Nazi and from the fascism. So they are very, very important. And in the song, there is a quote about poppy flowers. So I'm very, very attached to the poppy flower, and today we're going to make a beautiful card that you can use actually to maybe give it to a veteran in your family or in your neighborhood or whatever. For today's practice, I will write the instructions in the description box, but you need a pencil for drawing. I'm using actually some greeting cards recycled that I buy every year because I love to make my own greeting cards for every type of occasion. You can find a very affordable Walmart, Target, I guess, Hobby Lobby, Michaels online. If you don't have them and you still want to practice with me, you can use one of the paper pad that we use to create all the projects that you are including in your portfolio, and you can just fold it in half. The front will become your cover where you will do the design, and then inside you can include messages and quotes and everything that you want. So just in case, remember, my practices and my videos are meant to be approachable and affordable, so don't stress out yourself or your parents in case you're asking for their help. You can use materials that you have at home, and then you can redo the video as many times as you want to create multiple cards once you have the materials that you really, really want. Today I'm going to use the markers, and then in the future we are going to do another practice about poppy flower, and we are going to use instead oil pastels, which we didn't use, for probably since forever, I think. I'm going to switch the camera so we can do this practice together. Okay, this is my recycle cards, right? As you can see, you can fold it. And as I said at the very beginning, if you don't have right now a card, you can do it on a regular piece of mixed media paper, the ones that we use usually to do the project, and you just have to kind of match the edges and the corners, flat it down, so you have your beautiful booklet, basically cards ready. You're going to leave this space for writing beautiful notes, and we're going to use this as a cover, and so we're going to start our design. So you can follow me, you can do something different, you can have different patterns. We have been doing many practice together, so you do you, right? And you respect your artistic style. When we do flowers, I always tell my students, we always start with the circle, the center, right? So we do a little circle. Go ahead and do the same, and then we're going to develop the petals. The petals of poppy flowers, although this is an abstract representation, but we want to make sure that they look natural and not all the same. So you move slow with an irregular and organic type of lines. We did them in the past, so you know what I'm talking about, and you bring it back down. Now, to make sure that we don't do them all the same, we're going to actually leave a space empty, and we're going to start to fill the petal on the bottom. Same technique. Look at what your hands is doing on the paper. Irregular, nice line, and we keep going. We leave some space, for example, between these two petals, so the flowers will look overall more natural. And in this case, instead, we make them overlap, right? So we imagine that this petal is behind these two. Now we keep going. We're going to do something similar, leaving some space between these two. And then a nice tiny little piece of petal that is going to be very behind. Now we have a beautiful space, and I would say that we can do another one here, because remember, an important thing is just make sure that make sure that we can fill the space, right? That we don't have too much background or too much negative space and the positive is too little. So we're gonna make it here. We start from the center. So let's do that again. And then we create a nice little overlapping. So we pretend that this flower is underneath the first one. We do exactly what we did, very slowly, with this kind of very nice, soft, right? And squiggy lines, because we don't want something perfect. We leave the petal going out, it doesn't matter. We do another petal, and we do another petal here. And then maybe if you want to have a point of green, because the colors of the poppy flower will be mostly black and red, but we want to have a little bit of green, which is also the opposite color of red on the color wheel, so they're complementary and they will support each other very well. We can add maybe a leaves. You go down and back up, and you add the line in the center, so you remember that this is a leaf and it's not a petal. And we can do a tiny little leaf coming out from the flowers over here, and maybe one last coming from behind the first flower over here. And now, on this is recycled paper, you notice that the paper is not white, so my colors will actually they won't show exactly as they would show on a white paper, which is, for me, works perfectly, and I love that feeling. If you prefer the colors to show exactly as you see them, you might want to work on a white paper. So when you create your own card, fold in the mixed media paper, or if you go and buy your own card set, make sure that you buy them white, and you will have the color exactly as you see them. But if you're like me, and I really like to play a little bit around with colors, you can buy the recycled one. For my beginner, I'm doing this technique, which is extremely helpful. This is something that I teach my students before starting to color. We want to make sure that we outline the space so we know exactly where we have to color and we don't go outside. And now we start. I'm going to show you once again one of my favorite technique, which is basically we create this sort of a line, so stripe with colors, and we go up and down. This could be a technique that you can use, and remember that you can always move the paper, in this case the card, around. And I personally love to hear the noise of the markers on the paper. So let's be extremely quiet and let's hear your noise as well. Let me hear that. I'm going to show you a different technique, which we said that we do strokes, traditional, but remember what we say, mostly for my beginners, we do very short. We never do something like that. We don't want to scribble scrabble. I love the word, but I don't love the way that scrabbling looks on the paper. So remember that we want to really, in this type of art, at least, maybe in other type we don't, but in this case we really want to make sure that we fill our space with the color, and the color looks saturated, so really intense, no wide gaps or no gaps from the surface behind, underneath the color. We keep going. You need to make sure that you're able to see the pencil lines that you traced before. We're going to do black outline at the end. If for you it's difficult, you can do the black outline at the beginning. And actually, to give it some variation, I'm going to use also a magenta next to the red. So for example, for this petal here, I will use magenta, that it looks basically mostly on recycled paper. It looks more or less the same, but then once they dry, you will be able to notice the light different, which is it's very nice. I will use the magenta color for this petal as well. I'm using my technique of very short strokes so I can control the marker on the paper and I can fill all the spaces without leaving any gaps. Back to the red. Oopsie. And now we go and we keep going to our second flower. I'm going to outline the part that I have to color. This time I'm going to do one petal at a time because I want to use a little bit more of my magenta. You can use a dark orange, you can use just one plain red, you do you. Let's switch back to the other technique so you will have the opportunity to look closely to what I do, mostly if you are a young student, a beginner, if you're homeschooled and your parents are trying to teach you the right technique so you have a very, very good result with your artwork and you feel extremely satisfied and you also learn the correct way. And it is better to learn something correctly at the beginning than kind of fix the mistakes later on. So take your time. If you need to go slower, you will go slower. You pause the video and then you start it again. So you know your pace, you know the time that you have available, you know what is your goal for today's practice. Actually, when I will finish this card, I might do a couple of more so I can actually give them to some of the veterans that come every year in our school. I remember 3 school years ago when I was very, very new to Utah, they really dedicate part of the ceremony to my citizenship. So I became American citizen during the pandemic. So of course, all the ceremony and all the assembly were canceled, right? I just have to go to take my test, do the interrogation, the oral examination and everything. And then they told me to go to grab my certificate, but there was no ceremony. Everybody was in mask. Everything was very, very quiet, and very few people were in the same room at the time. We were not allowed to bring family, so I could not have a celebration. And so all of my students and the faculty and these veterans, they celebrated me together. They folded the American flag, explaining us what every single fold means. Then they gave me the flag as a gift, and they also gave me the paper with all the explanation for the meaning of the American flag's folds, right? When they fold it in a triangle, right? Every single fold has a specific meaning. So that was really beautiful and emotional. And I'm so very grateful. So I'm very happy to see those veterans coming every year again to help our school in celebrating the veterans. And this year, this is going to be the card that I will fill with words and I will give them. So if you have a veteran in your family, and I know that many American family has it, if you have a veteran in your neighborhood or among your friends or your parents' friends, it's a beautiful, beautiful way to celebrate them, creating something with your hands and dedicating your time and creativity and energy to them in order to make a beautiful gift to recognize their importance in our society. I'm gonna put some green over here. Very carefully we go into the gap. If you have a little gap between the petals, that gap will be filled with green. And as I say, I really like the fact that the colors will show differently on a recycled paper. So we show a little darker, right, and less bright than they would do on the white paper. But once again, you can use exactly the material that I'm using, or you can use what you have available. I don't want to have any, I don't want to make you or your parents stressed. So I'm using an extra fine Sharpie. You can use any markers any black marker that you have available, even for the cards. I use the Sharpie because these are my favorite markers and the one that I have available. But if you have a regular Crayola or other brands, use them. You know, they will work perfectly fine on paper. Now, to make this look a little more natural, look what I do. Remember when we did the zigzag lines, right? We're going to do a tiny, 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 tiny zigzag all around our black circle. Tiny, tiny, tiny zigzag. And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? There you go. Again, tiny, tiny, tiny zigzag. Go all the way around. This time you're allowed to scribble. Go for it. Now with the Sharpie, I'm going to make very nice outlines over the lines that I trace at first with the pencil. Take your time. If you are a beginner, you might want to go slower than I'm going right now, because you want to make sure that you really go over the lines that you trace with a pencil and you don't actually trace random outlines, right? You want to make your design very precise and you don't want to ruin it. If you have a regular marker, it's going to be fine. The only difference is that your lines will be bigger, thicker. We're going to do the same here, the same for the leaves, and we go down and we do exactly the same for our second flowers. Remember that the lines, they don't have to be geometric, of course, or perfect, because we are doing natural flowers, right? And even if it's an abstraction, which means that it doesn't look exactly like the real poppy flower, it's still like a pretty good, visual interpretation of it. Now on to our little pattern, right? Patterns make everything better. I'm gonna do some lines for the leaves. Make sure that you stay inside of the space of the leaves. Look closely what I'm doing. Once again, they are not the realistic copy of the real leaf, but they are an abstraction of them actually. If you need to slow down, slow down. And now I love to do some pattern inside the petals. And look what I do. The view is pretty close, so you should see. You need to go slow and control. You're going to do these thin lines inside the petals. They don't have to go to be equidistant. You can leave some more space here and there and then make them very close to each other around the edges of the petals or whatever you wish. You need to go slow. So let's do this again. Don't press too much on the paper. And Even if your lines don't look like mine, it's totally fine. If you are a beginner or a young student, it's perfectly normal that you have to practice and take some time. So this is why you have my videos, so you can play them over and over, and you can practice with me. You can pause it, play like I played it again. So you use the most out of my video to practice until you have the result that you like, and you have beautiful cards for veterans. The same for the second flower. Let's go. Remember, I'm going pretty fast. You slow down. If you finish after my video, it's totally fine. And this is our beautiful card. Now I do have a white gel pen. If you have, for example, a white Posca or white permanent marker like acrylic marker, you can actually add a few tiny little white dots that poppy flower have in the center. You see how beautiful? It's kind of bright the whole things up. If you don't have it, they're gonna look gorgeous the same. So don't worry about it. I'm gonna add in the description box basically the material, so I will include also the gel pen or an extra fine acrylic markers, whatever you can find. But if you don't, it's gonna look very nice. And I think that I will add my small signature B, and you can sign yours. And now you have your beautiful poppy flowers cards. So inside you can write a beautiful, meaningful notes for the veterans in your life. I'm gonna turn the camera so we can say goodbye, and thank you for practicing with me. Okay, friends, I hope you like the practice. I do love poppy flowers and different way to represent them. Abstract, more realistic. Today we did markers, then we can do watercolor, we can do pastels. Poppy flowers are so very beautiful and so very meaningful, as we say for many of us. In the description box, I will write a list of the material that I use. And remember, you can buy the same materials and keep it because you're going to practice with me, hopefully for many other videos, so you have everything ready. But in case you don't have the materials, you can use simple markers. You don't have to do the tiny little white dots if you don't have a gel pen or a Posca markers or any acrylic markers. And if you don't have the cards, you can actually create your own, folding the paper in two, right? And then another time you will be able to get the materials and you can watch the video again. So thank you for so much for practicing with me. Today was a very special practice, as I told you, and it was a beautiful way to remember the veterans in my life and you know what they did for me when I arrived in Utah. Bye, ciao a tutti.